Well, good morning, friends, and welcome back to Mysteries of the Nativity, our Bible study on the birth of Jesus here at Chapel by the Sea Presbyterian Church on Fort Myers Beach. I'm Dr. Jim Berger, the interim pastor. It's my pleasure to host you and have you present with us today for our study. And today, this is the last in the series of fitting for the 4 weeks of Advent. So what we're looking at today is the Star of Bethlehem. Now, when I was a kid, I used to wonder about this thing because where did it go? Why don't we see it anymore? So today we're going to look at that and dig into it. We find the story of the star, the whole story is in Matthew chapter 2. And it all begins with astrology, not astronomy. Remember, astronomy doesn't exist at this point. It'll come much later. But the astrologers, we begin with a guy named Ptolemy, who was working down in Alexandria, Egypt. Ptolemy surmised that everything revolves around the Earth. We are the hub of the universe. And so his whole system has the Earth at the center, the sun out here, and then the different planets orbiting the Earth. It kind of screws up your navigation, among other things. But that was the view that prevailed for thousands of years. You even had people creating these astrolabes, these complex mechanical devices to predict when the stars were going to appear and where they would appear. Your astrologers over the centuries tracked the stars. They mapped them regularly. And we don't look at the sky at all, particularly since we've filled it with light all night long. But in those days, people were looking at the stars and were watching them very carefully. Part of it was they believed they were living beings, and that they could predict and direct our future. The stars are what would guide us, was the belief. All this prevailed and it started to change when a guy named Johannes Kepler came along. And in 1609, Kepler published the first and second laws of planetary motion, namely that the sun is at the center and we all orbit the sun. This was a radical idea. You can imagine. The Earth is not the center. No, Earth is just another planet in the series. When he published these laws, it enabled scholars to locate celestial objects with great precision. Now, Kepler is also a very devout Christian. And one of the reasons he's studying the stars is because he wants to figure out, when was Jesus born? So he concludes that Jesus was born before 4 BC. Now, why? Ancient chronographers had said that Christ was born in 3 or 2 BC. But Kepler goes back to the scriptures and to the fact that Herod the Great was alive when Jesus was born. Now, by this time, 1609, Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews has been printed in manual physical type. I mean, it's in a book form. It's no longer in a handwritten manuscript, which it was up until then, until the invention of the printing press. Josephus, the book says that Herod died in 4 BC. That's the critical point. And that's what everybody turned to. When did Herod die? We know when Herod died. We know that Jesus was born sometime prior to that. Now, the Antiquities was first printed in 1544, and Kepler's writing in 1609. And recently, some scholars have gone back and looked at the old manuscripts from prior to 1544, and they discovered that the wrong date was set when they put the type together. And that was carried forward all the way to the 21st century. What was realized was Herod died in 1 BC, not 4 BC. So now we change our perspective. We look now for the birth of Jesus at the years 2 and 3 BC. And what we're going to look for is a correlation between events and celestial phenomena. Now, for the ancients, astrology is a form of divination. It's a way to know what the future holds. The stars hold our future for us. So you're trying to figure out what they say. And like I said, all the stars were assumed to be living beings up in the celestial realm. So the Bible disagrees, and it says that celestial objects carry signs from the Almighty, but those are not heavenly living beings. Takes a whole different perspective. So it prohibits worship of the stars, but we can look to the stars for guidance, for other information. We are not the revealer of the stars themselves. Now, in this story from Matthew 2, there are 9 points that we look to that are in this story of this Christmas star. All right. We begin with the fact that Matthew tells us, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the reign of King Herod, Magi came from the east. Remember, these are Persian Jews. They are scholars of both astrology, the stars, and the Hebrew scriptures. They've watched them both. They've tracked them. And they come and they ask, where is the one who's been born King of the Jews? For we've seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. So these guys have been watching the skies. They saw his star rising in the east, which is just logical because that's where all stars rise, in the east. But when they asked this question, Herod was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. That is an understatement. Herod is livid. He wants to find this new king and eliminate it. Herod was notorious. He didn't hesitate to execute his wife, his sons. It led Caesar Augustus to declare, after he killed his second or third son, Augustus made the comment, it's safer to be Herod's pig than his son, meaning that he wouldn't kill his pig. He was a ruthless guy, and there was an expectation that a new Jewish ruler would arise, and it was believed that the stars could announce such an arrival. So what do we know? What does Herod do? He takes the Magi's question as factual, and he doesn't doubt that there's something going on. He wants to know what it is. So he calls the Magi secretly, and he asks of them the exact time the star had appeared. So he's not watching the skies. He's busy with running his realm, but the Magi are. So that tells us that it appeared at an exact time, and Herod didn't know when it appeared. He had to ask. They have this discussion, and he says, go and search for the child, and when you have found him, come and tell me that I may go and worship him also. That's a bald-faced lie. He wants to go and kill the kid. So the Magi set out, and they follow this star, which tells us this star endured over a considerable period of time. It wasn't a flash in the pan. And it went ahead of them, it says, as they traveled from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. That'd be going south. By the way, when you look out the front door of the church, Chapel by the Sea, you're looking south. East is that end of the island. Bowditch Point and Times Square, that's the west end of the island. So just so you're not going to see the sun set directly out in front here. It's going to be over to the right. Okay, so the star goes ahead of them as they travel to Bethlehem. And then we're told the star stopped over the house where the child and his mother were. So here's what we know. Number one, the star signified birth. Number two, it signified kingship. It was not just any star. This was pointing to a particular event. Number three, it had a connection with the Jewish nation. People were, it said something about the Jewish people. Fourth, it rose in the east like other stars. It appeared at a precise time, and Herod didn't know when it had appeared. It endured over time. It was ahead of the Magi as they went south from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, and it stopped over Bethlehem. Let's put all that together. First thing we're going to do is rule out other celestial phenomena. Here's what we know it is not. It's not a meteor. It's not a meteorite. Because remember, that's just a flash in the sky, and it's gone. It's a shooting star. This thing persisted. This went on for a long time. That's out. Number two, it's not a comet because it's not behaving like a comet. And a comet, it's not as bright as a comet. It doesn't have a tail. It doesn't exhibit any of the characteristics of a comet. It's not a supernova because it's supernova would be stationary in the sky. This thing's moving. So we know that, we rule that out. So what are we left with? Planetary conjunction. Ah, that's a possibility. Last year on December 21st, if you remember, Jupiter and Saturn aligned in the western sky, and for several nights, but on December 21st, it was the brightest. What happened was the two of them, in their journey around the sun, their paths crossed. Now, remember, they're I don't know how many millions of miles apart, but nonetheless, their light appears to be coming together. And when they aligned, they formed the brightest star in the sky. Okay, that's a planetary conjunction. This particular conjunction has not occurred since 1643. It won't occur again until 2040. So this is a rare event. It was fun to watch it. You get right outside. That's just taken with my cell phone. You know, I didn't even use my wife didn't bother getting out her big camera to take a picture of it, but nonetheless, that's what we're looking for. Now, with our modern computers and the high-speed computing they can do, calculations, we can track all these occurrences of conjunctions back forever because the paths are predictable. So in the same way that we can project our tides, we know when they're going to occur because everything's connected. We can track back to see what was going on at the time of 3 to 2 BC and what was happening in Judea, modern day Israel. All right, so Jupiter is considered a wandering star. Now they're called this because as you look at them, they appear to reverse their course. They go this way for a while, then they stop, and then they go back. That's called retrograde. It appears they're going backwards, then they come forward again. And this retrograde motion happens because we are looking at them we're moving, the objects between us and them are moving, and they are moving. None of us is moving at the same speed. We're all different, we're on different orbits and are moving at different rates around the sun. So when you're from the first position, the thing might appear here, but when you get over here, it appears to be back there. And that's what we talk about as retrograde motion. Think about when you're riding in a car and you watch an object go by, and as you approach it, it's in front of you, but then it seems to move and go backwards as you go forward. That's what we're talking about. You got to just trust me on this. It's complex, and the astronomers have worked it all out. The astrophysicists, they've got it all figured out. Okay, so here's what we learned. Based upon all that evidence, and based upon the correct dating of Herod's birth, because we corrected the typo in Josephus's Antiquities of the Jews, Herod's death is 1 BC. In September of 3 BC, at the beginning of the Jewish year, the planet of the kings, namely Jupiter, met the star of kings, Regulus. And its retrograde back and forth made a triple convergence. And as they mapped it night by night, remember, this is not happening. This is not a NASCAR race or the Indy 500. I mean, this is slow stuff. Night after night, they're watching. These guys must never sleep. They're watching where these stars go. Okay, so it formed a halo over Regulus. Now, the other thing is Judah is symbolized by a lion. And the Jupiter-Regulus convergence occurred in the constellation of Leo, the lion. So they say, Judaism, the Jewish people, king of stars, making a halo, something's going on. Okay, so by June of 2 BC, Jupiter has moved on. Now it's in convergence with the planet Venus in the west. And because Venus is so much closer to the Earth and Jupiter is so large, these two, the convergence of these two form the brightest star ever seen. Now, the other question is, did the star stop? Because of our computational abilities with our high-speed computers, we know that on December 25th, 2 BC, Jupiter entered retrograde, and it appeared to stop in its travel through the fixed stars. And here's the other critical point. The Magi, viewing that star from Jerusalem, would have seen it stopped in the sky over the little town of Bethlehem, just where, Bethlehem, from you shall come forth the one who shall be the heir of David. So the Magi and the scientific evidence all agree. The answer is yes, it does. The scientific evidence agrees with the material presented in the Bible. So when you look for your Christmas star, remember that it was a one-time event. It was a one-time event to reveal a singular event, the birth of Jesus. And it occurred in accordance with celestial charting and in accordance with the story revealed to us by St. Matthew in Matthew chapter 2. So there's why you don't see the Christmas star every year. And every once in a while, you'll see a celestial convergence like that one last year. But every year, we celebrate the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. So I wish you a Merry Christmas, everyone. Please join us on Friday, December 24th here at the chapel. Our worship services will be at 5 and 7 p.m. And you're welcome. Masks required, though. Masks are required. So please join us. And we're not going to celebrate a planetary convergence. We're going to celebrate the birth of our Lord. Well, thank you for joining me for Mysteries of the Nativity. This concludes the study, and we're going to take the next 2 weeks off for Christmas and New Year's, and we'll be back on January 11th, and we're going to come back with the Bible for Dummies. Yeah, this is for you. It's for all of us. So join me as we take a 10-week tour through the Bible and look at the outline of what it says. I'll bet you've never looked at. We're kind of putting a frame around the picture so you know what's inside of it. And just a quick run through the whole history from the beginning to the end. And I think you'll find it fascinating. I'm Dr. Jim Berger. Thank you for joining me. This has been Bible study from Chapel by the Sea on Fort Myers Beach, Florida. And God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Merry Christmas. And I hope to see you on Friday. God bless you. Bye-bye.